H.O. Talk Show.
I am H.O. Talk Show, Sir Charles, Miss Max.
Yep.
On Charlottesville's number one for today's R&B, hip-hop, and the classics. You know, as always, Max, we're going to make it do what it do.
That's it.
That's right. So, with our guest that we have with us this segment, she came highly recommended.
Okay.
You know, I don't know if she knows, but she should be flattered, you know, on how highly she is thought of in this community of Greater Charlottesville. I'm talking about none other than Mrs. Jennell Lynch. Jennell, how are you today?
I am good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's definitely our pleasure. So, I know a lot of our listeners probably heard that the Charlottesville chapter of the Lynx had a New Year's gala for 2024. And in it, they had their inaugural Grit Award.
Yes.
Inaugural.
Inaugural.
Okay.
And Max, it was the inaugural. And guess who was so important to win the first ever? The first
I don't know if I should be nervous.
Charlottesville Lynx Grit Award, none other than our guest today. Go figure. Jennell Lynch.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, indeed. So Jennell, for those who don't know, go ahead and let the folks know what the Grit Award is all about.
Woo, it was heavy.
Yeah.
I was just sharing that Gina Patterson, who's the chair of the Lynx New Year's Eve Gala Committee, she wrote an introduction before my award and read it. And I was actually shocked. You know, most awards people read your bio and kind of just a couple of your career highlights. She did some homework.
Yeah.
She did some research. And it was more than the career. It was the community, my career experience, me as a mother, what I'm doing for my children in the community, my children's experience and their
The important
accolades,
stuff.
the real stuff.
Yeah.
So they saw me. I was like, okay, they really see me. She's watching. So the grit part, well, you're right. I was a little nervous, like, oh, they really watching me.
The thing that I did, when I did it.
I forgot I did that. Okay, somebody saw it. But someone recognizing, I guess, someone who manages all of that, you know, pretty well, who is continuing to do more than survive, who I feel like I'm thriving in my career, but also with my family, which is very important to me.
Yes.
People who don't know, I actually have 4 kids, all 4 who've gone through Charlottesville public school system, and they have literally thrived on their own. We were joking the other day that 3 out of the 4 have been on the news and interviewed for sports or academics or gardening.
So this is just a regular in your household. I thought we were doing something. Excuse me.
So we have only one, the 12-year-old who's in the 6th grade at Walker Upper Elementary, who has not been on the news, but she's been featured in other ways. So the Grit Award was kind of a combination of all things, all of that. I feel like it was not just given to me, but to my entire family. Yeah.
Yeah, so the description that I could find online, being that it was the inaugural, honestly, I didn't hear too much about it. And to be honest, like, I would have came if I would have knew that they were giving you an award.
It's so funny. Some people were asking me leading up to the event, like, "Hey, Jennell, you going to the Lynx Gala?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm going." But then afterwards, it's like, "You didn't tell me you were getting an award."
So you didn't know.
Kind of beating around the bush.
I did know.
Okay.
But I guess I didn't talk about my role or the award that I was receiving. And honestly, I didn't know it was the only award being given.
Okay.
I'm thinking it's an agenda. Most things, at a dinner, you have this award, an inaugural award, something else. So I thought it was going to be multiple awards. I didn't realize I was the only one on the agenda for the evening. So I guess the weight of it, you know. But it was a spectacular night. It was really nice.
And so were you nominated or selected?
So I was selected, I guess, by their committee. So they had a nominating committee, and it was a selection, and they talked through the process. And
okay.
So Max,
and that's a big deal because it's a lot of great women.
Absolutely.
I know a few who are members of the Lynx, and they set the standards in a lot of ways. And so for you to be selected to win that award says a lot about you.
Well, thank you. And, that night in my acceptance speech, I actually recognized a lot of other women in the community who has mentored me and who's helped me with my family. Like, it's not a grit award, I feel like, alone. Like, it's not Jennell Lynch doing all things by herself. This is actually a community uplifting effort.
Right.
And one of the women I really spoke about was the late Tamara Turner, who was a Lynx member and also one of our neighbors. And when we literally 2 weeks into Charlottesville and moving here several years ago, when she was still living, she sent me a text and was like, "Oh, be on the lookout for an invitation to Lynx event." So it was a full moment for me, just knowing that she would be so proud and so happy. We're close to her children, Adisa and Hodge and Tyreek Turner. We're still very close to them. So I definitely told them about the award. Like, oh, your mom would be proud, because she was really trying to get me to all things Lynx when I was when she was living.
Yes, indeed. So, for those that don't know, the Lynx Incorporated is one of the largest volunteer service organizations in the country. Matter of fact, and as Jennell was saying, this award was meant for a remarkable woman in the community who exemplifies guts, resilience, initiative, and tenacity. Like, this sounds like a boss.
I'm tired.
That's what that sounds like.
I'm tired. That's work. That's a lot. I'm not sleeping with all that.
That's a boss. So and Jennell, kind of, to give the folks more of an understanding, if we can introduce you to some and present you to others. But you are the founder of Executive Doula Agency.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Which is the organization that assists families through transformative periods. Right.
Yeah.
All right. So when you think about guts, resilience, initiative, tenacity, let's start right there with your business.
Yes.
Give us a little background into what got you into that business and how that serves the community.
Absolutely. You know what? I hadn't thought about it this way, but everything you just listed as describing the Grit Award, it's what I believe all women have.
Yeah.
But they haven't been able to exhibit that in their current work environments and culture. So for me, I've spent, prior to starting my own company, I was at the National Association of Investment Companies, NAIC, which is an organization that represents women and minority private equity investors, helping them to raise capital and advocating for them. And one of the things I recognize is that women were tapping out of the industry once they began to have children. And so I started, I became a doula myself while working in finance to kind of start a little side hustle, helping women not only through their pregnancy, but most importantly, postpartum, because I wanted them to stay in the career. Because in the finance industry, we already know it's a very small number of women, at the top. But if everyone who is in those managerial roles, when you start to get married, start to have kids, if you continue to tap out, the number will continue to be small. So I was really focused on helping women in the finance industry do more than just survive, to thrive as a mother, to thrive in their career. And that's how it got started.
That's awesome.
And I had some inbound investors who were like, look, we know about your side hustle. You want to make this a full-time thing. And that's how Executive Doula was essentially born as a B2B company. So I essentially sell the service to other companies to offer their employees as a benefit.
Interesting.
Awesome.
So now, are these services offered to women in general, or I guess I should say mothers in general, or do you work through different doula services to find clients?
So we recruit and train our own doulas. So one of the things I've also done is I've created my own curriculum. So that kind of explains the executive doula part. So it's a mix of what you would receive in a doula training, but also career coaching to kind of look out for the things related to postpartum depression and all of that related to being a mother, but in the workplace. So we look for and recruit current doulas, and then they go through a separate training, and then we can then disperse them out into with our clients that need help. And we also, in addition to mothers, I work with the dads, grandparents, aunties, uncles as well. We've created trainings for the entire workplace, because my thought is, while we have a doula working with the mother during the stage of her life, if nothing changes within the workplace, if the culture doesn't change, if they aren't educated on how they can be supportive, then that woman is going right back into where she started at. So the goal is to offer this individual support, but then also to offer training and education for everyone in the workplace.
That's awesome. Then what about us menses?
Ooh.
Can you train us on what,
yes,
we
I
need
can.
to do?
Look, I was like, ask my husband, Jennell Lynch. I think I've done a good job. No, but all jokes aside, we actually focus heavily on men. So from my background in working in sports and politics and finance, I have typically worked with all men. So people would joke and say, how did you have 4 kids and never stop working and never took a salary decrease or never took extended time off when you always work with men? Because I was always very direct in my needs and I was always very direct in what I wanted in that moment and when I would return. And so having those, and the men whom I then worked with, I credit them, they were supportive, the boards, the presidents, in all of my roles. And I've had a baby in each child was born in a different industry. So I've seen how they can react and what can be done, basically. So we actually created, you can look on Executive Doula's Instagram page, his birth stories campaign. And where I interviewed men and help them tell the birth story from their perspective. Because one of the things I say is during a woman's pregnancy, especially during labor, men retain a lot of what's happening in that moment because they aren't in labor themselves. So it's always interesting to hear men tell the story from their perspective and what they remember and how it impacted them. And then more importantly, picking out for helping them recognize how they can be more supportive in ways in which they originally thought they couldn't.
So I'm listening to you describe your business model, and I hear all of these different little touch points that build definitely a bigger picture, because you're helping to keep the family dynamics strong.
Yes.
You're helping fathers to be just that, be fathers and be connected and engaged and just be present in the world and within their family. And then I hear you an element of activism as well.
Absolutely, all the time.
And support for women, support for Black women especially. And then you think about them functioning in the business world, and you think about economics, and you think about, so
it's heavy.
Yeah, you got a lot tied in there.
I got a lot. And speaking of, I'm glad you brought up the word advocating. So a doula's role is, I would say at its core, is helping a woman to find her voice and advocate for herself, whether it's in labor, whether it's at work. She needs to know how to advocate herself, but also men. And me and my husband, we've actually done some live talks about this, is I need more men to advocate for themselves as fathers, also in the workplace, because you then set an example for the next generation of men that's coming up. So take the paternity leave. Yes. Take off to take the baby to the doctor's office. Say you can't take this meeting, you need to leave early to go to this football or basketball game. Like when others see you doing it, they will become more comfortable replicating that same behavior. But we know historically that hasn't been the case. Men may take 2 or 3 days off with their wife, or they're not. And I've spoken at conferences, even here recently. And after I talk, I have more men coming up to me to talk to me than I actually do women to tell me, like, oh my gosh, you just hit a nerve. Like, so it's interesting when men get comfortable having the conversation. They're an open door, but it's getting comfortable to have the conversation to then advocate for themselves.
So I hear your motivation behind what you're doing, but like, what's the real? Because this didn't just start however many years ago when you decided to start this little business on the side. Like, I'm sure that this, gumption was something that was nurtured and kind of just something you carried along with you probably throughout childhood, adolescence, so on and so forth.
Oh, it's interesting you hear that.
Yep.
Yeah. So I would say I come from a very big family of women. So my mom has sisters. My grandmother's one of 13. Big family of women, lots of cousins. I'm the oldest in my cousin generation. We've all been at each other's births. So essentially, we've all had doulas and had this village of support that have allowed all of us to excel in our careers, to not even have to think twice about, I can't do this because of the baby or the toddler, or I don't have this support. I mean, when I had my children, my grandmother, my mother came and stayed at the house, washing walls, like cooking, like doing all the things. And when I recognized as I got old, to me, that was like kind of like the norm. And to my core group around me and my family, that was the norm for us. But as I continued to grow in my career and move out into other areas, that's not the norm for a lot of women, especially if you're a transplant from a different state where you don't have family and you only may have one or two girlfriends. So you don't have that support that you need in the workplace. I mean, because I remember it was times at work where I would get sick when I was pregnant. Oh, I had a cousin or a good, I had a true village that could help me through those. But there's women who work through it. Like they're literally at work I've talked to women who have been on conference calls while they're in labor, scared to get off and leave. I'm like, wait a minute. No. So I think as you recognize the support I had with my children, I'm like, this can be replicated. But it can be replicated for a bigger purpose and impact across actually various industries. The other thing, because people always ask me, why isn't my business built for B2C? So why can't a woman come directly to us and say, hey, I need a doula? Would you? I've actually done that a couple times, and I did it a lot during COVID for individuals. But what I've explained, in order for it to have a bigger impact on a larger scale, at a quicker, faster pace, selling it to a business that can then roll it out. And I also started the business with almost like an exit in mind, that it could be acquired by something much larger than myself. So an insurance company, a broker, someone who's looking for a niche service that would leverage another benefit that they had. And I also continue to follow legislation. So I'm recognizing that doulas are being covered by Medicaid in certain states on the East Coast, and also now they're being covered by Medi-Cal in California. California is where I initially trained my first set of doulas at, because they're so progressive with maternal care. So it's a couple of components there that I'm following in order to scale the impact of the service and maternal health.
Yeah, that's deep. That's deep. Like, you said a lot there too. You said a lot, and and I don't mean that just in words, but like the depth of like each topic that you mentioned. One being, like, I believe that you were one that studied sort of the history of it, of doulas and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
And when I heard you talking, you were making me think about, like you said village, right? It's just that, and even more so, I feel than it being, as you kind of navigated your career and all that kind of stuff. I feel like it's more generational. You know what I mean? I feel like it's like we've just gotten away from that family element. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like we moved away from Big Mama.
Yeah. Oh,
you know what I mean?
1,000%. 1,000%.
And I believe that that's something, that's part of our culture that we brought over here, when we came here.
And we need to get back to it. We need to figure it out, or figure out the substitutes. If you don't have that grandmother figure, who is the stand-in, who is the substitute? It's something I found, even though I had it within my own family, when we moved to Charlottesville, I still have that village. And it's interesting, and Gina Patterson talked about this a little bit during my introduction, and I do the same. And I think now that I know people are watching, I realize I didn't think about it, but I naturally, if I see a child who needs a ride, get in the truck. Did you eat? You can stay at my house. Like, it's just an open, what needs to be done and my husband is the same way. Whatever needs to be done in the moment for a family or a child is going to be done. Like, it's not even should we do it? Or can we afford to do it? If I got 2 packs of oodles and noodles, we all going to split it and eat some oodles and noodles tonight.
It's important.
Yeah, and important. Now that we're talking about this, my mother was a social worker. So I was raised in this kind of, not only you have your village, but you have to be a village for others. And she was a big volunteer person, just through her nature of being a social worker as well. She did a lot with United Way and the Tidewater area and Lynchburg. And as a child, we had to go. Like, if she said, Saturday we got to go and do a coat drive. Oh, you may need to take off your coat because I didn't get a chance to buy enough coats, so I have no money to get no coats. Okay, well, we're going to take off our coats and I'm going to keep on my sweater. And,
right. Wow.
But since a child, so it's kind of, I guess, like in my DNA.
There you go. It's been instilled in you, like that community service, that being civic minded. That's awesome. So something else that I heard you mention too, and I'm glad you did because I was already thinking about it, was when you talked about like the advocacy part too, and I know Max mentioned that, like whether it's the fathers or the mothers, but you talked about like the differences that are in California, for instance.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, so do you find yourself doing any lobbying and whatnot? Because I know over the past, I don't know, maybe the past few years, like there's been a lot of changes to to the what is it, the Family Medical Leave Act?
Yeah.
Right, and so if I'm not mistaken, just some years ago, like men weren't, like by law,
not able to take advantage of it.
They weren't allowed to take off like mothers are.
It's still an issue for a lot of companies, depending on who you work for, and if they actually use government assistance and FMLA and that sort of thing. So I kind of walk a fine line because I do have a lot of associations that are related to maternal health, child care, pregnancy, who try to push me to advocate and even lobby for them because of my political background and working for a senator. But what I still keep at the forefront is, yes, that's important, but I feel like my day-to-day role in my job, I am lobbying as a Black woman and a mother. Like I am very vocal about what is needed, what could be done without, and I also know how politics works behind the scenes. So let me play this role and do this really, really good instead of dividing my energy and time. It's only so many hours in a day and getting pulled away. And I do help a lot of associations on the back end. Like I've been asked to serve on a couple of national boards that's related to maternal health. But I say, look, I can't serve on the board, but tell me give me a task. Give me a task. Give me a politician you want me to call. Tell me what you want me to write in a letter, and I'll do that for you. So I'm very vocal about that and advocating that way. The other hat that I wear that kind of plays a little bit into this is not only access to healthcare, but access to capital. Coming from a finance background, I recognize as a community, especially Black and brown people, we do not have access to the same type of capital.
That's right. That's right.
To fund the initiatives and other businesses that are related to healthcare. So I actually also am an operations partner for a venture capital fund of funds that started out as a $50 million VC fund. So we're actually now raising a fund to fund VCs that are focused on tech and healthcare, AI, that specifically invest in Black and brown individuals. So that's another thing I'm very passionate about because I know the network exists, but it's connecting the bridges that if someone's always operated in one bubble their entire life as an entrepreneur, they may not have access to the investors who are then interested in them. So because I have crossed industries numerous times, I'm excited and passionate about connecting those dots.
Awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah.
What they say, Max? Guts, resilience, initiative, and tenacity.
Well, so I was thinking about that when we just started to talk about all the different irons that you were holding, and that acronym, and I think we may have even mentioned BOSS earlier. And when thinking about all the things that we as females and we as Black women juggle, you realize just how much goes into those four little letters or that little small word, and then it gives you, because you know how difficult it is to stand up under that, it gives you a little bit of grace for other people who ain't doing it so well.
Listen.
Who ain't doing it so well, you know? And, people can easily,
That's important.
Fall into judgment of those who just don't have the same, shortcomings as them. But it's hard work, and we should be supporting each other then.
I use the word grace, I feel like every day, multiple times a day. It may be my word for 2024.
Yeah.
We do not extend enough grace. And I use it a lot, though, in corporate settings and at the board level. So when boards and companies are making decisions,
they look at you crazy, like, this is not church, girl.
They do. And they be like, who is this little Black woman in here with all these men telling us we need to be graceful? Right. And who asking us about our wives and our kids?
Right.
Because I always dig deeper. I always want to know about an individual's family to be like, you actually have a spouse. You actually have children. So let's flip the script and put your wife in this bucket that we're talking about. And then the shoulders shift, people kind of change. But, I think a lot of times people aren't comfortable challenging people in these conversations.
Yeah.
Right.
Whereas I'm very comfortable. And I don't know if it's the age or the experience or my village or the net. I talk to a lot of women about it's important to have a net, because I think I take a lot of risk that some people won't take, because I feel I have a net where I can stand up, I can say things. I don't care what people. I really don't care about people's opinion because I don't have time. But the fall out of the risk, I'm like, I'm gonna be okay. Sometimes my husband is like, "Girl, what are you getting into now?" But I don't know. It's just something I've always had. Even as a child, I've always had this kind of risk mindset. But somebody has to do it.
Right. That's right.
Somebody has to do it.
Yeah. Sure. And that makes me think about the fact of how you're going through businesses to provide these services.
Absolutely.
There has to be pushback, right?
Oh, 1,000%.
Like, and when I say pushback too, I'm speaking along the lines of you're almost liberating. Like you're liberating my worker who I may want to control. Like I may want to keep them here, and you're telling them they don't have to be here.
So what's interesting is when I'm actually...
And empowering men to take maternity leave.
Wait a minute, you're about to sit on all people out there. What are you doing? So it's interesting. I actually don't pitch the business service. I pitch retention. I talk about retention. How are you keeping your employees here?
Yeah.
I actually assess their current benefits. So I ask a lot of questions. What do you currently offer? How many people take advantage of this? How much are you spending on benefits that people actually are not taking advantage of? How many people have had children in the past 24 months? How many have left and did not come back after that? So I ask these questions to get them thinking about more of the dollars that they could potentially lose if they do not have the right support in place. Right. And it's interesting, especially when depending on who you're talking to, change the conversation. Yep. Then once I get them locked into the dollars, like, we can save money on this. We can keep these executives. Oh, we want to recruit more women, so this could be a tool to help us recruit more women. Then I dial them into the actual nits and grits of the service itself. Yeah,
you got to speak their language.
Got to speak their language.
Yeah, what is the benefit, right?
What is the benefit? I didn't start out about that way because I was so passionate about the service, like physically helping and being proactive with women. And I had an executive of a global healthcare institution come to me and say, look, this is how you sell this. Let me tell you how much money I lose. And they explained to me when a labor and delivery nurse has a child and does not return back to work, it's a $274,000 per problem for that one nurse in our system.
Wow.
So I would rather spend X amount to preserve that one person being here because that's a large number.
Makes sense.
And it made me flip my whole sales, like my everything. Like you need to think about when you talk to institutions that way and talk about how much money they're going to lose. It's a different conversation. Yeah.
So I'm thinking about because we're talking about these Fortune 500 companies, these corporate companies, as far as who takes advantage of your services. But I'm also sitting here thinking about the fast food restaurant up the street, where this young woman is 6 months pregnant and feels like she has no options and really doesn't know what she's going to do once she has the baby. How is that built into your portfolio at all?
So that is actually one of the first things I built into my model.
Okay.
It's where ideally, and another reason why I wanted to work with mid to large size companies is that their contracts actually cover free doula service for other levels of businesses in the community. If I can pay executive doulas what I need to pay them, I then can continue to pay them to deploy them out for other small businesses, the hourly workers who cannot afford it.
Yeah.
Like that's always been built into our model. And so encouraging companies to take advantage of that and not negotiate. And that's how I get out of also negotiating sometimes. Like, look, we can negotiate all day, but no, if you go with this rate that I'm proposing, you're also covering service for the other 200 women in this county within your vicinity that you could actually check the box of your community service. So I try to work it in as a benefit in numerous ways and a social impact for the actual companies that can afford it. Because seeing how much money large companies spend on conferences and sending employees to different, things, I'm like, I know what y'all spend. But and then once they find out I've sat on the other side of the table, like, okay, she actually does know.
Yeah. And family, we are talking to none other than Mrs. Jennell Lynch. She is the founder of Executive Doula Agency, and she is also the inaugural winner of the Charlottesville Lynx Grit Award. One more again, Max. Guts, resilience, initiative, and tenacity.
I need a nap after that.
So getting back to the Lynx, though, I don't know that we've covered why you're a member?
I'm not a member of the Lynx.
Okay. Familiar with their work, though?
Very
believe
familiar.
in their work?
Very familiar, but completely believe in everything they do.
Why?
Yeah. It's at the core of my upbringing. The community service, the self-care, the openness. I think many women have probably seen, especially the Lynx here, publish the events that they're having, the walks, the things for Black women, the things for children. It's important. Yeah. And it just speaks to, again, Black women and how they care for their community, which is also at my core. So believe in everything that they do.
Okay.
Yep. That is awesome. That's awesome. So, Jennell, before we let you go, too, because you alluded to some other things, but what other irons do you have in the fire? Hopefully Jameez already knows.
He knows. No secrets. Okay. That's the first person to always know what I'm about to get, what trouble I'm about to get into.
Just making sure we don't broadcast it to
her. So. Like, baby, don't listen to the radio on Sunday when we leave the church.
but you obviously are, someone who's a ball of energy, and you have vision, passion, right? And so, just know that you could also have gotten this award probably for some other endeavors and some other things that you're, doing in the community. So, so just before we let you go, maybe some other things that, that our listeners can listen out for, or, other things that they can support.
So a couple things I'll mention. I serve on a couple of boards here locally in the area that I'm super passionate about, and one is the African American Teaching Fellows, AATF. Having kids in public schools knowing the impact that African American teachers will have on their lives if it's more. So how do we get more teachers in the public school system here? How do we keep them more importantly?
That's right.
And not venture out to other places. So I love the work that the organization is doing. I've been a board member for several years now, and just the impact I've seen on some of the Black teachers my children have had, even starting in the second grade. My son Jacoby Lynch has had a teacher, Miss Stephanie Coleman, who has had a huge impact on his life and continues to support him. She calls on him to come over to the school to do some volunteer work and bring his friends. And, so we need that. Teachers who are going to look out for your child, even once they're out of their care in their hands. It's so meaningful. And it sets an expectation for them with other kids. So that's one thing that I'm very proud about. I also serve on the Public Foundation Education Board here, PEF. That services Charlottesville and Albemarle city schools. Another great organization that finds out about different initiatives and projects the school systems are doing and figure out how to donate and make a contribution. They also run some camps during the summertime at UVA. They partner with UVA, and and that's how I found out about it. My kids, when we first moved here, went to the camp. And some of the people that were working, found out who I was like, oh, we should, get her involved. And I was like, it's about what? Oh, I am down. So continue to support them. The other thing with being an advocate and people having access, I'm a founder, so I always support founders, but also the investment managers and connecting them to capital. It's kind of a interesting world for people who aren't very familiar with it. But as you can imagine, if you are a woman or a Black or brown venture capitalist, you also have to go out to your business, your product is money. You have to go get that. That's very hard for them. So in 2023, I actually co-founded an institute that helps to educate and train venture capitalists and introduce them to new sources of capital, like family offices, high net worth individuals. And these were companies, investment managers from all over the world. Right now, we're in the process, I can talk about a little bit, of another large investment firm and foundation is going to acquire it. And I'm excited about that because that actually gives them a bigger pool of potential investors where they could get money from. It puts them on a bigger platform. This company actually runs some of the biggest tech conferences for Black and brown people in the country.
Okay.
And they run a couple of events. So I'm very excited and proud about that. It's like having a baby and sending it off into the world like really quick. But hey, I'm never wed to one thing. If I can help it to a point and someone can take it and grow it, just like executive doula.
Yeah.
Everything for sale.
That's right.
And that's saying something, because not everybody feels that way.
Yeah.
You know, they'll hold on to it to the point of extinction and not realize.
When I tell you I could do a panel on that,
Yeah.
on educating entrepreneurs on the value in scaling your company to create generational wealth and explaining how that works. Because like you say, a lot of times our folks, we will start a company and hold on to it, or a business, and it's our baby. We will.
Yeah.
But I'm always looking for the exit and how to create more value, not just for yourself, but the generations to come under you.
Yeah.
That's big. That's big. You're not gonna shout out your soror? You're not in the soror?
I'm not in the sorority.
I'm surprised. Like, I thought I had her pegged right there.
Well, my husband always called me fi me.
Me fi me? Okay, hey.
You know,
hey, I'm with you there. I ain't hating on that.
He's a mega. He's a cute.
Yeah.
So, but he always be like, all right, me fi me. Come on, let's go to this event.
yeah. You know, that's, ain't nothing wrong with that at all. Team of one.
Team of one right there. Team of one right there.
Yeah, so but thanks for joining us, Jennell.
Thank you for having me.
Did we not cover something you wanted to talk about?
No, I think we covered.
Because I feel like the conversation could just keep going, you know?
You know, it could.
But yeah.
We covered it all.
Okay.
I think we covered a lot.
That's awesome. But you know, what we can do, like, you could actually close us, because I feel like that you are an inspiration to so many. So the women that are listening, right, what would be your closing words, you know, like for those who tuned in and said, wow, like, she won the first Grit Award. She's helping all these women, these people. Let me hear what she got to say. What would be your, like, you know, your last words in this interview to the listeners? You
too have grit. Do not give up. Assess your support and your resources around you and figure out what you need. Do not be afraid to ask for help, because you never know who is willing to step up to the plate and help you. But ask for help and don't give up.
Thank you. Continued success, Ms. Jennell Lynch.
Thank you.
That's good stuff.
Appreciate you all.
Take care.
IMHO Talk Show.